Better? Okay. So welcome everybody to the public programme at Pinta 2011 in London. We're delighted to be working with Pinta for the second time. And we're grateful recipients of the Museum's Acquisitions Grant from Pinta, as well as organising the Talks programme. Specifically, we'd like to just thank Mauro Erlitzka, Diego Costa-Pelza and Alejandro Sainz, plus the Pinta team. And also like to thank the collections team, especially Miriam Metlis, who's here to my left, who's coordinated the programme this year. And finally, just to thank the speakers and the audience for coming. I hope you enjoy the talks this afternoon. I'm going to hand over now to Professor Valerie Fraser from the University of Essex.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. Thank you, Joanne. Joanne is the person in charge of the Latin American collection at the University of Essex. We have a very busy programme this afternoon. I am just going to be briefly introducing the speakers and explaining how the programme is going to work out. I think I want to start with the fact that having an art fair, a Latin American art fair in London now, here, with nearly 60 galleries and hundreds of artists, amazing work here. I think it would have been inconceivable, unimaginable 40 years ago that the sort of thing could happen. When I was a student on Dawn Ades's new course on Latin American art, this is a very, very long time ago, at Essex in 1970, in fact, there was so little awareness and so little knowledge and so little written, so few books, so little material, that we had no choice Dawn had no choice but to focus on, which was fine, Aztecs and pre-Columbian material and Mexican muralists, and that's more or less what there was available material in the UK. But of course there was nothing to see. There were no Mexican muralists painting on the walls of Essex, unfortunately. There were illustrations available in a few books. There were. The British Museum's holdings of pre-Columbian art were mostly in storage. There was very little even of the great ancient material to see. There was a little bit in the Museum of Mankind, what was then called the Museum of Mankind. But now, of course, things have changed, and this event here is an example of that. We have a big collection at Essex now. One of the central tenets of the art history department at Essex was that in order to teach art history, you need to be able to see works of art. You can't just work from illustrations. So one of the rationale behind the building of our collection was that we would then be able to teach with it and use it for students. Of course, Tate has been very, very actively collecting in recent years, and there's now, I think, almost anywhere, any time in the UK, you will find exhibitions that are involving art from Latin America of some sort. It has become so much more current. It's quite an extraordinary change. And our original little beginnings at Essex have expanded, and there are now many, many art history courses that include reference to material from Latin America. It's just become a much more standard aspect of the history of art. So today we have a very busy programme, two sections that I'm chairing this afternoon with a brief pause, literally a brief pause between the two sections. Then after that there will be another brief pause. There will be a short film by David Lamelas, and then there will be a performance by Felipe Ehrenberg, who I can't now see, but who will be performing after the film. We will, at the end of the talks, there will be questions. We are taking questions as well on Twitter. If you want to send questions in now or at any time during the art fair, then do send them to Twitter at UECLA, UECLAA, which is the Latin American collection, or using the hashtag and just Pinta Art Show if you are interested in doing that. So this afternoon we have a programme that involves two key players in the curatorial field whose exhibitions over the years have done so much to awaken interest in the UK in Latin American art. And we have two young curators who are pushing in new directions, but who today will be talking to two major artists from Latin America who both worked in the UK in the 1970s. So there's a sort of series of links here. So it's appropriate that our session this afternoon opens with each of the two parts of the afternoon's programme opens with interviews with these two artists. After all, it is the artists on whom the rest of us depend. The educators, the curators, the collectors, the gallerists, we all depend on the artists in the end. So that's why we've organised the programme, so there's artist and then a curator, artist and then a curator. So first of all, I want to introduce Isobel Whitelegg, who took a PhD from Essex some years ago and is now at Chelsea College of Art Design. She's director of the MA in curating. She's a specialist in Latin American, particularly Brazilian material, and she's also a member of the TRAIN Research Centre, the Research Centre into Transnational Art at the University of the Arts London. And she is going to be talking to David Lamelas, who was born in Argentina, studied in London in the 1970s, has worked in many different media, many different styles, and has always been concerned with ideas of the transmission of ideas and of information, and the relationship between the artist and the medium and the message and the audience. And that's where I will hand over to you. Thank you.
Okay, we better go straight in so we can keep to time. The questions that I wanted to ask you today, David, focus a lot on your relationship with this country and how this has been quite a consistent element of your work up until the present, up until now. And the first thing I wanted to ask you about, I was rereading recently an excellent essay by Stuart Comer about your work in an issue of After All in 2005, and he mentions that when you were in Buenos Aires in '66, already at that moment, British minimalism in the form of artists such as Anthony Caro and Philip King was an influence. And so what I wanted to ask was how was British art, and those artists in particular, received in Buenos Aires at that moment in '66?
Well, it was very well received. Thank you very much. Well, we were very lucky at that time because we had the Di Tella Institute, and they brought artists from all over the world, and some of them were British. Mm-hmm. And so I got mostly to get to know British pop art. And then I remember I used to go to, for some reason, for whatever reason, I was always interested in English art and cinema and culture in general. So I used to go to the British Council Library, and I used to peep through the Studio International. So all information I had were little black and white pictures of works of Anthony Caro and Philip King, Barry Flanagan, Hamilton, etc. So I had some information, brief, but I did have some information. And I always saw a lot in common between my work and their work. And so I always wanted to come here.
And so it was a deliberate desire to come here, to work here, and to meet these people.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, very much so. Yeah, but let's not forget the music, the Beatles. Let's forget every other things.
It seems appropriate from this point to talk a little bit about the process. And the various points at which you stopped, including the Sao Paulo Biennale in '67, the Venice Biennale in '68, both of which were part of your journey from Buenos Aires to London, if I'm correct.
Yeah, well, my journey to London started very early in a way. It started when I was about 7 years old. My mother, who is Spanish, brought me to Europe when I was 7 years, and it was a Royal Mail boat. So I had experience of British life very early, and even though my mother hated the food, I loved the food, and I loved the way I was treated. Mm-hmm. So I always wanted sort of to feel the way I felt during that trip. So that stuck with me. And then I was very lucky because in 1966, my first one-man show in Buenos Aires called Galleria Lirolai, it was called the Super Elastico, the Super Elastic. And I arrived one afternoon, and it was a little letter by Sarah Lambanes saying that he loved the work, he was very interested in the work, please give me a call. And then I did, but it was too late. He was already gone to come back to London. At that time, he was the director of the Tate Gallery. Mm-hmm. And then I was lucky again. In '67, I represented Argentina at the Sao Paulo Biennial. And once again, Sarah Lambanes was the chief, he said the president of the jury. Mm-hmm. So. And I didn't know who he was, but I saw this man walking around my piece several times during the day. And then I asked somebody, who is he? So Alan was, oh my God. Oh, well, anyway, so I was a jury of 11 curators. And then including Ida Rodriguez from Mexico, Ottoan from Paris, and a few, 7 other curators. And I got the Sao Paulo Biennial Prize for installation. Mm-hmm. And then he introduced himself, and I was very lucky because with him was the woman who was running the British Council of that time. And then he said to me, David, why don't you present yourself to a scholarship that the Arts Council, not the Arts Council, the British Council gives to South America, Latin America. And I said, I already did, which I'd done it a year before. And then I didn't win the scholarship, but I got a letter saying that I should present myself the following year. Mm-hmm. And the reason I didn't win the first time, it was because of my very poor English. It was really awful. It was really like 0, So they think that before I came here, I should learn a little, So I did. I took an English teacher, and then a year later I had the test again. And then I think Sarah Lambanes had a lot to do with it. And then a year later, I was at St. Martin's.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good juncture to ask you about this work, but also I'm asking about this in specific relation to something which is you still do now, and I think that this work, which was made in London in '68, was a remaking of a work you had produced already in Argentina, the signalling of 3 objects, and this is something that you do quite regularly up until now. And am I right in thinking this was the first moment when you were sort of going back to something you'd made in Buenos Aires and working out how it could be remade in London?
The reason I made this piece is because when I moved to St. Martin's, my tutors were Anthony Caro, Philip King, Barry Flanagan, John Latham. And John Latham, of course, he was not in the object, neither was Barry Flanagan, but Philip King was very open to non-object-oriented work. Mm-hmm. But Anthony Caro was very upset with anybody doing conceptual-oriented work. Mm-hmm. Well, those days didn't exist the word conceptual. And then I was making a film. I made a film, the one we'll see later today. It was my first film ever. And then he saw very little of me at the studio because I was spending most of the time at the library. Mm-hmm. and writing my work. Yep. And then I said, for the masters, I wanted to present my film called A Study of Relationships Between In and Outer Space, made for the Camden Arts Center. And then he said, well, David, if you want to do Mr. Lamelas, he said, if you want to do film, you better go to film school. Mm. Ooh. Well, in a way, he was right. So this is the sculpture department. So then, actually, it was very good. So he obliged me to reconstruct 3 pieces that I've done in Buenos Aires just as I left Buenos Aires. Uh-huh. And one of them is these. And then another one is called Situation of 28 Metal Plates. Yes. And I'm very happy I did, because I have in photographs, because in Buenos Aires I kept no record of my work. Very, very, those days we just do the work and forget it. You move to
without the
another thing.
documentation.
So actually I think that Anthony Carey was a good teacher.
In the end.
At the end, yes.
And what were the differences between this work as it was made in Buenos Aires and it was made in London? Was it a similar kind of outdoor?
Yeah, it was always
installation?
outdoors, and but here I made it looks different because he is adapted to the British landscape, and which is even though in Buenos Aires you have very similar landscape, the atmosphere is different. And one of the things I liked about this work is the air that it goes through the trees and everything, and that answers your question.
Okay. And
It was different, but it's the same concept, because it's not the object what I'm after, is the concept. I was already then that way, yeah.
And this is something we were talking about just before we took to the stage about this. So it was actually Anthony Caro who encouraged you to remake for the first time.
Well, I was obliged to, especially because I had the a scholarship from the British Council, and those days it was very, it was like, I think it was £65. Can you imagine how it changed? And I wanted to get another year, because the year went very fast. So to get my extension, I needed from my professors a letter of recommendation. And so it was, to get my master's, it was necessary to get another year in London. And so he actually liked the work. But it's very interesting, because I don't have a picture of the other one called Situation of 28 Metal Plates. The original piece was made steel, and when I presented the piece at St. Martin's, those days is the St. Martin Charing Cross Road, it's still there, but it's moving ahead soon. But at the roof we had a big loft there. We presented the work, and my work extended through the entire loft, huge space. And he said when he walked in, "Who made this piece?" He said, "It's me." He said, "Well, you were making films anyway." He was surprised that I was able to handle metal, and then but he wanted it painted. Interestingly enough, he wanted to be the sculpture be finished. It had to be painted. So, and I didn't want any color on it, so I painted the color of rusted metal, kind of browny, brown, rusty metal, and then I got my master's, and he agreed. And it's good, because he obliged me to finish the work somehow, so it was a good teaching. You have to push your students.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And this relates, though, to the work that is currently installed in London, which similarly, although albeit with a larger expansion of time, is returning to a work also from '66 and remaking another space. And we've got...
Well, this is the original photograph of the piece called Connection of Three Spaces, Conexión de Tres Espacios. And that was made at the Di Tella Institute in 1966. And the idea of the piece was to, I was already, one of the things that bothered me about even minimalism, American or British minimalism, was that once you view the sculpture, it takes only one view. You walk around it. I wanted the piece to be a mental construction. The same way when you read a book, you don't read the whole book at once. You read page by page, and you accumulate in your memory the previous page. So I wanted my sculpture to have the same go through the same phenomena. So I made a piece that it goes from room to room, but there are not three different sculptures. It's all the same piece that only exists in your mind, in your brain as a memory and processor. So and this was '66. And now at the Bloomberg Space in London, we have the same piece. And maybe we should show.
Do you want to have a look at those? Okay.
what the piece is now. It opened last week.
If we can make it look better.
Yeah, can we make it big all screen, or if we can? Yes, we did that before. More.
Might be as good as it gets, I think.
Okay, okay.
We talked through these images, but also I wanted to go back to this conversation we were having about what it means, what action it is that you're performing when you remake a work, when you kind of retrieve something that was made,
Sorry.
more than 40 years ago.
How
How do you
40 years
understand?
ago? Wow.
How do you understand? Because the remaking was not the right word, but how can you sort of understand what it is that you're
Okay,
you're doing?
before I like to experience the work. It's no
Okay.
way we can make it full screen, is it? Double click on where? On, huh? Can you do it?
That's what we are doing.
There, that will be
Yeah.
better. Okay. Okay, so I'd like you to experience the work. You saw the original. This is happening in London at Bloomberg Space and Fraser Square. And this is, I will go quickly so you experience the work. This is room number A, and the construction is a light wall, which is a reduction of like approximately 30% of the big wall already in the building. This is a reduction of the wall. So I made the wall into a light wall. And if you look down there, you'll see a skirting. Skirtings are usually very narrow, but I made it 10 times larger. So, but that is the storyline. If you follow that line, you will follow the piece. Here you can see the skirting better. So if you start reading the work from that corner, you follow that line. Then you go to the next room. No, we lost. He didn't keep
The order.
the order. He didn't keep the order. Sorry. Anyway, so we have it programmed, but anyway,
Yeah.
so it goes from there to here. So we go to this space, and a space. This I call this space number B. Space number B. You see a light structure, which represents the thickness of the wall at the Bloomberg space plus my light wall. It's as if the wall went down like that sideways, you know. So this room, which has two doors, one door, then you turn around and you enter this room, and that's where you find this room with this it's like as if the wall was disappearing. It's like a shadow of the wall, let's put it that way. And then when you walk into a space, you are confronted again with the wall that you saw in room number A, but in a smaller and thinner version. It's as if the wall got thinner. This is only thin like this, hanging into space.
So there is a very precise narrative for walking
So you
through and
see, I
understanding it.
extended the space into the atrium of the Bloomberg space. So even the you cannot walk into the air. Of course, you can't. Mentally, intellectually, you do. It's like space that you get to.
Okay.
Okay, that's it.
You can see the real thing.
Oh, I thought that was it.
No, I don't think so.
Oh no, we have hours.
We have 2 minutes. We have 2 whole minutes.
Okay, yeah.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Okay, hurry up.
Speed up.
Oh well, this is the film. We'll see. This is the film
Yeah.
we'll see later. And this is the film I wanted to show Anthony Caro for my master's at St. Martin's, and it was made for the Camden Arts Centre for a show curated by Peter Carey, who was the chief curator at the Camden Arts Centre of that time, and for a show called Environmental Reversal. And then I confronted him with the idea of making a film for the show, which was very new at the time. I mean, it was not like today you walk into an art gallery, museum, or Kunsthalle, and you see video, film, images, photographs. Those days it was very rare. So I finally got from the Camden Arts Centre a £95 budget to do the movie. And with that big budget, we managed to do this film. And then we'll see that later.
The film was shown alongside documentation. Can you sort of briefly say what the documentation related to?
I always when the relationship between the moving image and the still photography interests me, because you see the same thing, but your perception is different of the event. So on the wall there were stills from every different segment of the film.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe we'll have time to say a little bit more about the film just as a way of introducing it at 5 o'clock, so we can finish off more elegantly. Okay. But now I think that our time is up.
Thank
and I still have things to ask you.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll steal some time later.
Question. Oh, is it okay? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, David and Isobel. You can stay put, or if you want to move down, but I don't think there's anywhere to move down, so I should stay put.
But thank you.
You can stay there. You can stay there. No, you're quite...
I thought it was like television.
No. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce Dawn Ades, my teacher, who's teacher and colleague at the University of Essex now, who specialises in surrealism and is a pioneer in the study of Latin American art in the UK, and curator of major exhibitions, including the 1989 art in Latin America at the Hayward Gallery. And we just perhaps move the speakers around, so you stay there. You're fine. Dawn can press the button, I think, is what's required. Thank you very much, Dawn.
Thank you, Val. What Miriam?
Sorry.
Thank you, Val. I have a few photographs to show you of the exhibition that I was asked to speak about. Art in Latin America. Sorry, what did we call it? Yes, art in Latin America, 1820 to 1980. That is nearly 2 centuries that I was ambitious enough to wish to explore. I have a few photographs to show you, and I have, as a result of looking at these, which I found again the other day, one piece of advice to young curators, and that is always take your own installation photographs. Make sure also that you do take installation photographs, because it's extraordinary the number of shows I've been involved in where I have no real record. It's better nowadays, but 30 years ago, I'm afraid we rather failed. I have a wonderful record of Anthony Caro's 1966 exhibition at the Hayward Gallery, but very few of my own shows there. So that's also a slight apology because these photographs were taken, and I'm very grateful to them. They were taken by the architects of the exhibition, and as a result, the architects, of course, are far more interested in space than in the objects in each room. So it doesn't give you a very clear idea necessarily of what was actually there. That gives you some idea of it. Can you hear me okay? I know there's quite a noise outside. Is that all right? Yes. Well, I'm very briefly going to talk to the where, when and why of this exhibition. 1989 at the Hayward Gallery in London. Both significant facts. And I would like to also mention someone who is extremely important for this project, and that's Andrew Dempsey, who had been responsible for exhibitions of Mexican muralists previously at the Hayward Gallery, was very interested in art from Latin America, and came to me sometime in the mid-'80s and said, look, and I'd been also, I think, perhaps talking to him about the difficulty of teaching Latin American art, which I'd been doing for 30 years, without being able to actually show the students very many examples. So these two ambitions came together, and he said, well, we should do a show of Latin America at the Hayward Gallery. Everyone was then thinking, because of the fast approaching 500th anniversary of the encuentro, of the encounter between Europe and America Latina, otherwise known as the Conquest, 1492, the 500th anniversary was coming up in 1992. So everyone was thinking about doing exhibitions at that time. And Andrew decided that it'd be better to have it before so that we would sort of miss the rush. Many other people decided to have it before too, so that we were all kind of crowded around about 1987, 88, 89. A number of exhibitions took place. I have to admit that this exhibition that I was invited to conceive and curate is looking back on it, I mean, it's very governed by my interest as an historian. And you'll see how certain aspects of it have now become much more important in a sense than they were seen to be at the time. I'll show you those in a moment. But the very fact that it started in 1820, this exhibition, has an historical justification because, of course, that's really the date of the independence of most countries within Latin America. I originally wanted to call this exhibition Art Since Independence, and it was pointed out to me that very few people in this country would have the faintest idea what that meant. So we had to have a much more generic and general term. So this is the entrance to the exhibition with two much earlier colonial paintings, an angel with a gun and a, I don't know what that one is. It's a sort of painting of a saint from the probably the 17th century, and then a very large map, because I was interested in sort of tracing the long relationship, the way that the visual actually operated in terms of this complicated colonial and then post-colonial history. What do I press? That one? No. Oh, sorry. Oh, yes, that one. I've done something. Sorry. Next. Sorry. Oh, there we are. Yes, thank you very much. Yes, okay. And I just wanted to also show you the cover of the catalogue, Art in Latin America, with a painting by Gil de Castro, a Peruvian artist from the early decades of the 19th century. It's a painting of one of the heroes of independence, which I think was a fantastic painting. And I should say that one of my interests in putting this exhibition together was to actually discover things that were really very unknown in Europe. What I also discovered was that I had somehow imagined that there was a much greater unity and mutual exchange of art, ideas, histories within Latin America, and this really wasn't very much the case. I mean, the history, Peru was, had its own ideas about its own history and its museums and so on. Colombia another, Mexico another, and there was much less interconnection, much less sense of Latin America and Latin American art, in a sense, than we were perhaps developing at Essex. That's all changed too now, but that was the case in the mid-1980s. The exhibition travelled to Sweden, to Stockholm, and you can see the cover was the same for Stockholm, but the title of the show was different. It was called Jord och Frihet, which is land and liberty, the great Zapata call for the Mexican Revolution. And the emphasis, in a sense, when it was shown in Stockholm, was a little bit more on the Mexican Revolution as a central episode. The show also went to Madrid, where it was in the Palacio del Retiro, in the park. And there, the cover of the catalogue was a Frida Kahlo painting. So it's actually very interesting to compare the different catalogue covers, and particularly interesting, actually, is this version of the catalogue, which is not, it didn't accompany the exhibition. It was a later re-edition of the catalogue, published by Charles Cossack, the Cossack Naifi publishing house, and with, as you can see, a very different slant with the cover, with the Sergio Camargo relief, which I think kind of reflects what has been one of the most fundamental developments, if you like, in the way that Latin American art is received and appreciated here, and that is that the work of the 60s and 70s up to the present day has become far more dominant than it was then. We did, however, so this is, I think this was it was very prescient. I can't remember what date this was, something like 1995, 96, that he brought out this copy of the catalogue in Portuguese. So, just to emphasise the difference between these two approaches to Latin American art through the covers of the catalogues. Well, I'm just going to now take you very quickly, as far as I can, through the installations at the exhibition. The photographs show it, I think, slightly more dramatic than it really was, though it was quite dramatic. There was a mezzanine floor built in. I'm sure you all know the Hayward Gallery. I hope you do. You certainly should. The first main exhibition space has a very tall ceiling, as you probably know, and we built a mezzanine floor there, and we're now on the mezzanine, so you're looking down into the entrance, and you can see that I included several examples of pre-Columbian sculpture from the British Museum, including this wonderful Aztec snake in the foreground and another Aztec figure which is balanced above the entrance. And the intention was to create a number of interconnections, sort of historical connections, through the placing of these sculptures. The one that you can just see the back of, sitting above the sort of balustrade, is immediately above the angel with gun, and the idea was, in a sense, to mark that change, if you like, from the pre-Columbian to the post-Columbian, so that people would see that sculpture as what was there before. But then you come to it again as you went upstairs to the room that was devoted to Mexican mural painters, not, of course, on the whole, represented by their murals, because we couldn't really dig them out of the walls, but by paintings. And I wanted to show how important the rediscovery of as it were, the ancient art was in the 1920s. I mean, some of you may know a manifesto by Siqueiros, one of the mural painters, calling for, turning away from Europe and away from modernism and to the art of our ancient forebears, to the art of the Aztec and the Maya, who had a true constructive spirit. It's very interesting, he uses that term, constructivist. He says, look at the sculpture, look at these sculptures. So I wanted to show what he was talking about with sculptures among the paintings. Now, sadly, owing to the emphasis on space and architecture, you don't really see many of the muralists' works themselves. If you can see right beyond the entrance, you can see some red walls and just a fragment of that painting of the Martyr Olaya. I painted that room red because I wanted it to sort of reflect independence and revolution. And the next room was painted dark green, which is meant to be a sort of academic colour. I don't have much more of those. Well, you can just see, you can't really see, that those are where the mural, Siqueiros Rivera and Orozco's paintings are. I can't go through it room by room. The catalogue was very faithful to the exhibition, and each chapter of the catalogue was devoted to one of the exhibition spaces. So if you're actually interested in the sequence of the rooms and the sequence in the story that I was trying to tell, you could look at the catalogue. This is a room which was devoted to late 19th century, early 20th century, the sort of picturesque, costumbrista and popular. And I included quite a lot of so-called popular art, masks, this wonderful crocodile. Crocodile is actually worn by dancers in rituals. This is back to the room of the muralists. I did manage to get one mural scale preparatory drawing by Juan O'Gorman, which was there to instill a sense of the right. Okay, I'm hurrying up. Of the gigantic space, the gigantic scale of these works. Okay, and then I'm just going to end up by comparing two of the final rooms of the exhibition. One of which I curated, and the other was curated by Guy Brett. And that was the other intervention that was incredibly important of Andrew Dempsey's. Andrew said, "Look, I really think Guy would be able to make a wonderful contribution to this show." And so we had a sort of a black room and a white room side by side. Mine was called Private Worlds and Public Myths, and it was basically a lot of Frida Kahlo, Maria Izquierdo, Mata, Lam, GTO, and a lot of other artists who I associated in a very broad way with a certain kind of surrealism. And I'm not going to have time to talk about what I hope were the real differences between my show and an exhibition called Art of the Fantastic, Art in Latin America. Because my show was not intended to be, demonstrating some essential character of Latin American art, which was, fantastic or magical realist. Very much not. I was just showing one aspect of this in the exhibition. Sorry? Art of the Fantastic. It was in Minneapolis. I think it was Minneapolis. Indianapolis, thank you. Yes. And that exhibition did turn into a kind of account of Latin American art, and that was something I really deliberately wanted to be as pluralist as possible. I did not want it to be an essentialist exhibition about this is the truth of Latin American art. Though I kept encountering, when I was travelling around Latin America and discovering all sorts of amazing things, that people would say, well, of course, the key thing about Latin American art is that it is all geometric, or whatever it might be. So I was trying to say, well, actually, it's more complicated than that. The other room, of course, is this wonderful room that Guy curated, which was the sort of constructivist, neo-concrete, and so on room. And so the two rooms were kind of, in a sense, seen as two sides of a coin, if you like. What you can, before I say, I'll finish in a second, but can you see through that room to just a fragment of a wall that I'm particularly proud of, actually, because I had never heard of these artists before. That was the Madi group, who I first encountered in about 1987 in Buenos Aires. And I thought it was the most astonishing thing I'd ever seen. I knew nothing like it in Europe, and I thought we really must, we must have a good representation of this. And that, the Madi artists have now become really quite well known, very, very famous. But I was very pleased with that. And the Madi, you could enter Guy's space either through the Madi room or through the surrealism room. And you can see that this included work by Elioti Sika, Lydia Clark, Lydia Pape, Matthias Goeritz, and gave a very different a very different sort of account of that period. So, I suppose what I'm really saying, right? I'm wrapping up now. Is that in some ways this now I think is the art from Latin America that has moved most easily into a kind of global celebrity, quite rightly so, and has become really very well known. And I'm delighted to say that Tate is now busy collecting, as far as it can, the artists that we see here in Guy's room. So thank you very much.